I used to think I had it all figured out. A loving wife, a steady job, a cozy home in the Chicago suburbs. Life wasn't flashy, but it was comfortable, predictable, safe. Every morning, I'd make 2 cups of coffee, one black for me, one with oat milk and cinnamon for Emily. She'd rush out the door in her heels, smiling that same smile that once made my whole day feel lighter. I'd watch her drive off, thinking, that's my wife. We're building something together. At least that's what I thought. Back then, I worked as a senior software engineer for a small tech firm. Decent pay, good people, nothing glamorous. Emily, though, she was on fire. She'd just been promoted to senior marketing director at Evans Global Technologies, one of those shiny downtown firms with glass walls and expensive suits. I was proud of her. Honestly, I was. But somewhere between her late meetings and business trips, I started to feel like a background character in my own marriage. She'd come home late, toss her bag on the couch, and scroll through her phone while I asked about her day. Long one, she'd say, eyes glued to the screen. We're pitching a huge campaign. Richard wants it perfect. Richard. That name started showing up more and more. Her boss. The man she said believed in her. I didn't question it at first. I trusted her completely. But trust, that's a fragile thing. Once it cracks, you can never quite glue it back the same. It started small, tiny shifts you'd almost miss if you weren't paying attention. Perfume she never used before. A new dress that just felt right for the office. Nights where she'd come home smiling at something on her phone. And when I asked, she'd say, just a funny meme from work. But I knew that laugh. It wasn't her office laugh. It was her real laugh. The one she used to give me. One Friday evening, she said she had a work dinner. She promised she wouldn't be late. Midnight came and went. No call, no text. When I finally heard the garage door creak open, I was sitting in the dark living room. She looked startled seeing me awake. Oh, you're still up? She said, avoiding my eyes. Yeah, I said quietly. Just wondering how dinner went. She froze for a second, then smiled that polite, distant smile I'd grown to hate. It was fine. Just business. But something in me didn't believe that anymore. The next morning I saw it. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A message preview flashed for half a second before the screen dimmed. Last night was unforgettable. Time stopped. My chest went numb. My hands shook as I stared at the phone, the words searing into my mind. When she came down for coffee, I didn't yell. I didn't throw the phone. I just asked quietly, "Who's Richard, do you really?" She froze mid-step. The color drained from her face. At first, silence. Then a heavy sigh. "Daniel, please don't make this harder than it already is." Harder? That word burned through me. I asked again, my voice trembling, "Are you in love with him?" Tears welled in her eyes, but not the kind that come from guilt, more like regret mixed with relief. "I didn't plan this," she whispered. "But yes, I am," just like that. 3 words, and our marriage ended. She tried to explain herself, how I'd lost my spark, how she needed someone driven, someone who matched her ambition. "You're a good man, Daniel," she said. "But I can't live small anymore." Small, that word echoed like a slap. I stood there numb as she packed a suitcase. Her movements calm and rehearsed. I wanted to say something that would make her stay, something that would remind her of who we used to be. But all that came out was silence. When she walked out the door, she didn't look back. I sat there for hours, staring at the spot where her picture used to hang on the wall. It was strange how quiet the house felt. Without her, no footsteps, no laughter, just the hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the clock. I remember stepping outside that night, into the cold Chicago air. I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Rain started to fall, tapping against the windshield like a heartbeat. That's when I whispered it, half to her, half to myself. You replaced me for power. Let's see what power really means." In that moment, something inside me broke. And something else woke up. It wasn't anger. Not exactly. It was purpose. I didn't know how, or when, or what it would look like, but I made a silent promise right there in that car. She chose ambition over loyalty. Now I'd show her what real ambition looked like. That night, I stopped being the man she left behind and started becoming the man she'd never see coming. You never really know how quiet a house can get until the person who filled it is gone. After Emily left, every corner of our home felt hollow. The couch still had her favorite throw blanket. Her perfume still lingered in the hallway. But she wasn't there, and neither was the man I used to be. Days turned into weeks, and I drifted through them like a ghost. I'd wake up, stare at the ceiling, and wonder when life had stopped feeling like mine. I stopped answering calls. Friends tried to reach out, but I didn't want sympathy. I didn't want advice. I wanted the noise in my head to stop, the same replay over and over again. Her face when she said, "I'm in love with him." That sentence didn't just end our marriage. It ended the version of me that believed loyalty was enough. I'd scroll through social media at night. Probably the worst thing I could do. There they were, Emily and Richard, laughing at a rooftop party, champagne in hand. A magazine photo of them at a corporate gala, her in a glittering dress, his hand resting on her waist like she was his prized possession. Each post felt like a punch. I remember staring at one picture for almost an hour. The caption read, "Power couple goals." And that's when it hit me. That's what I wasn't to her anymore. Power. I wasn't the ambitious dreamer she once believed in. I'd become safe, predictable, a man she could leave behind without guilt. The bills started piling up. The house, the one we built together, was too much for just me now. I sold it and moved into a small apartment near the city. No backyard, no memories, just a mattress, a desk, and an empty fridge. One night, I sat there in the dark, staring at my reflection in the window. I barely recognized the man looking back. How did I let myself become this? That's when my phone buzzed. It was Mark, my old college friend. We hadn't spoken in months. "Hey man," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I heard what happened. You've got to get back up. Don't let her be the end of your story." I almost laughed. Easy for you to say. But he didn't back down. "Daniel, listen. You've got brains, experience, and time. Use it. You want to get even? Do it the right way. Succeed so hard she has to read about you in the news." There was something in his tone, not pity, but belief. The kind I'd lost in myself. After that call, I sat in silence for a long time. His words echoed, "Don't let her be the end of your story." And for the first time in months, I felt something other than pain. I felt resolve. I took what little savings I had left and rented a small workspace in downtown Chicago. It wasn't much, cracked walls, flickering lights, and a single desk that wobbled when I typed. But to me, it was a start. I named the company Carter Tech Solutions. Just me, a second-hand laptop, and a whiteboard full of ideas. The first few months were brutal. No clients, no income, just endless cold emails and unanswered calls. I made mistakes, a lot of them. I remember one night when my software demo crashed right in front of a potential investor. I wanted to disappear, but every failure taught me something. Every rejection built a scar that made me sharper. Late nights became my new routine. I'd code until sunrise, fueled by black coffee and pure stubbornness. Sometimes, I'd look out at the city lights and think of Emily. I wondered if she ever thought about me, if she ever missed the man who once believed in her dreams more than his own. Then I'd shake my head and whisper, if success was what she wanted, I'll give her success she never forget. Months later, after what felt like 100 failed pitches, I got a call from a mid-sized logistics company. They'd heard about my new software system, something I'd been perfecting for months. They wanted a meeting. I remember walking into that boardroom wearing the only suit I had left. Hands sweating, heart racing. I gave it everything, every ounce of energy, passion, and purpose. 2 days later, the email came in. We're in. Let's start next quarter. Just like that. My company had its first major client. I stared at the screen, not sure whether to laugh or cry. For the first time in a long time, I felt alive. That night, I didn't celebrate. I just sat there, watching the city lights through my office window. Maybe losing everything, I whispered, was the only way I'd ever learn to build something real. The pain was still there. But now it had a purpose. Emily and Richard might have had their power couple moment. But my story wasn't over, not even close. She thought she left me behind. What she didn't know was that her betrayal just built my beginning. 2 years. That's how long it took for the pain to turn into purpose. I used to count the days since Emily left. But somewhere along the way, I stopped counting. I was too busy building something that actually mattered, something that was mine. Carter Tech Solutions wasn't just a company anymore. It was my redemption. Every morning, I'd walk into my downtown Chicago office, sunlight bouncing off glass walls, the hum of computers filling the air. The place had life, energy, and ambition. My team respected me, trusted me. And for the first time in years, I trusted myself. Sophie, my assistant, sharp, quick, and loyal, was the first person to believe in the new me. She'd joined when Carter Tech was still just 3 desks and a dream. Now she managed teams, handled clients, and kept me grounded when my old demons tried to crawl back. Big day, she'd say, sliding a folder onto my desk. 3 new clients, and your software just hit another record. I'd smile. Not bad for a guy everyone counted out. She grinned. Guess heartbreak has its perks. We'd both laugh, but deep down, I knew she was right. Pain had forged something in me that comfort never could. Then one morning, while scrolling through business news, a headline caught my eye. Evans Global Technologies faces internal shakeup amid declining profits. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, my heart calm, my mind focused. Richard Evans, the man who took my wife. The man who looked down on me like I was nothing. His empire was cracking, and that's when it happened. That cold, steady flame of revenge reignited inside me. They built their empire on arrogance, I murmured. I built mine on pain. Over the next few days, I did my homework. Turns out, Evans Global was bleeding money. Poor management, failed product launches, internal scandals, the perfect storm. Sophie walked into my office one evening, catching me deep in research. "What's that look?" she asked. "You're planning something." I smiled slightly. "Just studying an old lesson, which is, never underestimate a man who's already lost everything." From that day, I began moving quietly. No grand announcements, no revenge speeches, just quiet, strategic steps. I found out which suppliers Evans Global relied on, which vendors handled their logistics, their software, their maintenance. One by one, I started acquiring them through shell firms and silent partnerships. Nobody suspected a thing. I made sure of it. Each acquisition gave me leverage and visible strings, tied to the same empire that once made me feel powerless. It wasn't about hurting them right away. It was about control. About knowing that, one day when the time was right, one tug on those strings could make the whole system tremble. Late nights became my new addiction. My office lights would stay on long after everyone else went home. Sometimes, I'd catch my reflection in the window, older, sharper, more distant. The man who once cried in the dark was gone. In his place stood someone unrecognizable. Someone dangerous but calm. Sophie would sometimes stay late too, bringing coffee to my desk. "You ever sleep?" she asked once, half joking. I looked up from the spreadsheets and said quietly, Sleep is for men who are done proving something. She gave me a long look, then nodded. Whatever this is, just don't lose yourself to it. Her voice was soft, sincere. It reminded me of who I used to be and what I could still become, but I couldn't stop. Not yet. Weeks turned into months. Carter Tech's growth exploded. We became one of the top consulting firms in Chicago, with clients nationwide. And behind every new deal, every new success, a quiet part of me whispered, "This is for the man they said would never rise again." One Friday afternoon, Sophie walked in with a tablet in her hand, looking pale. "You should see this," she said. On the screen, a confidential business report. Evans Global was officially seeking new investors to survive. The headline read, "Evans Global in talks with private buyers to secure future funding." For a moment, the room felt still. It was happening. The moment I didn't even know I'd been waiting for. The company that took my wife was now up for sale. Sophie looked at me carefully. "You're thinking of buying it, aren't you?" I leaned back in my chair, eyes on the city skyline glowing in the distance. "Not yet," I said. "First, I want them to feel what it's like to need help and not know who's holding the rope." She hesitated. "And when the time comes?" I smiled faintly. "Then I'll pull." That night, as I walked out of the office, the Chicago air felt colder than usual. But it didn't bother me. I looked up at the skyscrapers, at the empire of glass and pride that was beginning to crack, and whispered to myself, "They think I'm gone, but I'm closer than ever." What they don't know yet is that I'm the storm they created. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, quiet, patient, and deliberate. It had been almost 3 years since Emily walked out of my life. In that time, I'd rebuilt everything she thought I'd lost. Carter Tech was thriving, our name showing up in every major Chicago business paper. And yet, I wasn't celebrating. Not yet, because my story with Evans Global wasn't over. It started with a quiet meeting in my lawyer's downtown office. A simple sentence changed everything. If you want control, you don't attack the castle, you buy the land it stands on. That's when my quiet campaign began. Through a series of shell investors and holding firms, I started buying small portions of Evans Global stock. Nothing suspicious. A few percent here, a few there. No one noticed because that's how real power moves. I didn't want to destroy them overnight. I wanted them to crumble slowly, not from pressure, but from their own arrogance. To make it work, I needed patience. And patience became my weapon. Sophie, my right hand at Carter Tech, handled most of the logistics. She didn't know every detail, but she trusted me enough not to ask. One evening, as the city lights painted her office window gold, she asked, "Why this company, Daniel? There are easier acquisitions out there." I looked up from the documents and smiled faintly, because this one taught me what losing everything feels like. She studied me for a moment, but didn't press further. Maybe she already knew. Over the next few months, rumors began to swirl in the tech world. Quiet whispers about Evans Global losing major clients, struggling to keep investors, cutting corners. I wasn't the one spreading those rumors, of course. But sometimes all you need to do is nudge the right people. A few strategic press releases, a few anonymous sources hinting that Evans Global's new product was behind schedule. Nothing illegal, nothing loud, just enough to make shareholders nervous. And nervous shareholders sell cheap. Meanwhile, Emily, once the pride of Evans Global, was beginning to feel the cracks forming under her feet. She still appeared in company photos and interviews, her smile perfectly rehearsed. But if you looked closely, her eyes told a different story. Through the same business circles that once mocked me, I heard she'd been losing influence inside the firm. The glamorous events had grown less frequent, the tone in her interviews more forced. Every article, every photo, it was like watching the same movie play in reverse. Then came the night everything shifted. the New York Tech Innovators Gala. I wasn't planning to attend at first, but fate has a strange sense of timing. Carter Tech had just been nominated for Emerging Company of the Year, and the organizers insisted I be there. The ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and the hum of wealth. Suits, champagne, smiles that didn't mean much. I was shaking hands with investors when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Daniel?" I turned, and there she was. Emily. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Time slowed. Her eyes scanned me up and down, confused, surprised, maybe even a little impressed. "Wow," she said quietly. "You look different." I smiled, calm and collected. Guess I finally stopped waiting for someone else to believe in me. We made small talk. She tried to hide her discomfort, but I could see it, the flicker of doubt behind her polished expression, when she mentioned how challenging things had been at Evans Global. I simply said, "Funny how tables turn when you stop waiting for someone else to flip them." She blinked. No anger, no insult, just truth. Before she could reply, someone called her name across the room. She smiled weakly, said, "It was nice seeing you," and walked away. And as I watched her disappear into the crowd, I realized something. Revenge wasn't about rage anymore. It was about balance. 2 days later, back in Chicago, I sat in my office as my lawyer entered with a folder in hand. He placed it on the desk, eyes gleaming. "Congratulations, Daniel," he said. "You're about to become the majority shareholder of Evans Global Technologies." For a second, I didn't say anything. The weight of that sentence, what it meant, hung in the air. I opened the folder, saw the numbers, the signatures, the quiet power behind it all. Then I smiled. "I built this from pain," I said softly. "Now I'll run theirs with purpose." That night, as the city lights shimmered outside my window, I stood alone in my office. No champagne, no celebration. Just a man staring at the skyline, knowing he was about to walk back into the same empire that once pushed him out, only this time through the front door. The company that took everything from me was now mine to command. They say revenge is best served cold. But as I walked into that boardroom, it didn't feel cold at all. It felt quiet, calm, like the moment before a storm finally breaks. The day had come. After years of planning, patience, and silent moves, I now held controlling ownership of Evans Global Technologies, the same empire that once took everything from me. But I wasn't there to gloat. I was there to end a chapter. The atmosphere inside the conference room was tense. Board members whispered among themselves, brows furrowed, voices low. On the massive glass screen, financial charts glowed red. Richard Evans stood at the head of the table, older, visibly stressed, still pretending he was in control. His once confident smile had been replaced by a nervous twitch. He cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, I've secured a potential investor," he said. "If all goes well, Evans Global will be back on its feet in no time." His voice cracked halfway through the sentence. That's when the door opened. Every head turned, and I walked in. For a moment, nobody spoke. The air froze. Richard blinked, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief. "Daniel Carter?" I smiled slightly. "It's been a while, Richard." He forced a laugh. "What are you doing here?" "This meeting is private." I placed my folder on the table, slid a document across to the head of finance, and said quietly, "Not anymore." The man at the end of the table looked at the papers, then up at me, stunned. "Sir, these are controlling shares." Richard's smile faded. "What are you talking about?" I turned to him, voice steady. "Mr. Evans, I'm the new owner of Evans Global Technologies." Silence. The kind that fills a room when truth hits harder than any shout ever could. Across the table, Emily sat frozen, her face pale. She hadn't noticed me at first, but now her eyes locked onto mine, a mix of shock, confusion, and something else. "Regret, Daniel?" she whispered. I looked at her for a brief moment, then turned back to the room. I wasn't here for her tears. I was here for closure. Richard's voice broke through the silence. This is absurd. You can't just walk in here, and I raised a hand slightly. Actually, I can. Every share acquisition, every merger, every silent buyout, all legitimate. You just didn't notice because you were too busy saving your own seat. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. Some hid their smiles. They'd seen this coming. I stepped closer to the table. Don't worry, Richard. I'm not here to destroy what's left. I'm here to rebuild it, properly this time. His jaw tightened. So this is revenge? I looked him in the eye, calm and clear. No, this isn't revenge. It's just business. Something you both taught me. For a moment, no one moved. Then Richard sank into his chair, defeated. The fight had drained out of him. Emily finally stood, her voice trembling. I didn't know. I never thought you'd come this far. I turned toward her, my tone soft but distant. You once said I wasn't ambitious enough. Maybe you were right. You just didn't realize what that would turn me into. Her eyes glistened, but I didn't linger. This wasn't about pain anymore. It was about peace. The head of legal stood. Mr. Carter, he said, addressing me formally, as majority shareholder, you now control the company's direction. Do you wish to proceed with leadership transition? I nodded once. Effective immediately. Richard's pen dropped from his hand. His empire, his identity, was gone. I gathered my papers and walked toward the door. As I reached it, I paused, glancing back at the people who had once looked down on me. You all built this company on pride. Let's see what it looks like built on purpose. Then I walked out. Outside, the air felt lighter. Employees stood in clusters, whispering about the sudden leadership change. No one knew the full story, just that a new name was taking over. As I stepped into the elevator, a few clapped quietly, unsure but hopeful. They thought they were applauding a new CEO. Only I knew they were witnessing something far deeper. The end of a cycle that began the night my wife walked away. When the doors closed, I exhaled for the first time that day. Years of anger, heartbreak, and ambition all leading to this moment. And yet, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like balance being restored, because revenge, I realized, doesn't heal you. It just clears the path for who you were meant to become. They took everything from me once. Today, I took back more than a company. I took back myself. Some endings don't come with shouting or chaos. Sometimes, they arrive quietly, like a final page turning in a book. You never thought you'd finish. It had been a few weeks since I took over Evans Global. The headlines had calmed. The employees had adjusted. And for the first time in years, I felt still. But closure has a strange way of finding you, usually when you think the story's over. That evening, my assistant Sophie walked into my office holding a small white envelope. Someone dropped this off for you, she said softly. Inside was a note, handwritten and brief. Can we talk? Just once. Emily stared at her name for a long time. My first instinct was to ignore it. After all, what was left to say? But something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe mercy, told me I needed to hear her out. So I agreed to meet. We met at a quiet cafe tucked away on a side street in downtown Chicago. I arrived first, sat by the window, and watched the rain streak down the glass. It reminded me of that night years ago, the night she left. When she walked in, I barely recognized her. The woman who once carried herself with such confidence now looked tired, humbled. Hi, Daniel, she said softly, almost afraid to speak too loud. I nodded. Emily. We sat in silence for a moment, the kind that weighs heavier than words. Finally, she took a breath. I've been meaning to say this for a while, she began. I made a mistake. A big one. I said nothing, letting her continue. I thought I wanted more, she said. I wanted success, power, recognition. And I thought being with Richard would give me that. But it didn't. It just made me realize how empty ambition can feel when it's built on betrayal. Her voice cracked as she spoke. She looked at me, eyes full of regret. You didn't deserve what I did to you. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her, almost. But pity wasn't what either of us needed. Emily, I said quietly, you taught me the value of ambition. You really did. I just wish you hadn't done it this way. She looked down, tears glistening but never falling. When I saw you walk into that boardroom, I couldn't breathe. You were everything I thought I wanted, but by then, it was too late. I leaned back, calm but distant. It's never about being too late. It's about choices. You chose power over partnership. I chose pain and turned it into purpose. She nodded, her hands trembling slightly. Richard's gone. The board removed him after you left that day. I don't even know what's next for me. I looked at her for a moment, the woman who once shattered me. And all I felt was peace. Maybe that's a good thing, I said. Sometimes starting over isn't punishment. It's grace. We sat in silence again. No bitterness, no shouting, just two people sitting across a table, surrounded by memories that didn't belong to them anymore. Finally, she asked, "Are you happy, Daniel?" The question caught me off guard. I thought about my company, the people who believed in me, the man I'd become. I'm at peace, I said. That's better than happy. She smiled faintly, wiping the corner of her eye. You always had the kind of heart I didn't know how to protect. I stood, placing a few dollars on the table for my coffee. You don't owe me an apology anymore, I said gently. But I hope you find what you're looking for, and this time, I hope it's not someone else's dream. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but the words never came. Instead, she just watched as I turned and walked toward the door. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city glowed under the streetlights, reflecting off the wet pavement. For a second, I glanced back through the cafe window. Emily sat there, staring down at her cup. Small and still, a reminder of a life I'd finally outgrown. And as I walked away, I realized something powerful. Revenge might give you satisfaction. But forgiveness, even silent forgiveness, gives you freedom. That night, as I drove home, the city lights blurred into streaks of gold and white. I thought about how far I'd come from the man who once begged for answers to the man who no longer needed them. Maybe justice isn't always about getting even. Maybe it's about learning that peace isn't found in someone's apology. It's found in your ability to move on. She once left me for power. But in the end, power is exactly what made me walk away. Not to win, but to finally be free. Some endings don't come with applause. Sometimes, they arrive in silence, when you finally realize you don't need revenge anymore. It's been a year since the takeover. And as I stand in my new office, overlooking the Chicago skyline, I can't help but think about how far I've come, not just in business, but in who I am. The city below hums with life. People rushing toward dreams they're not even sure they believe in yet. I know that feeling all too well. I used to be one of them, chasing validation, chasing someone else's version of success. Now, I chase something different. Peace. I still remember that night, the one where everything began to crumble. The rain, the betrayal, the silence that followed. Back then, I thought revenge would heal me. And for a while, it did. It gave me purpose when everything else was gone. It gave me energy when I was too broken to care. But standing here today, surrounded by everything I once thought I wanted, the wealth, the view, the power, I finally understand the truth. Revenge might give you focus, but forgiveness, that gives you freedom. I built Carter Tech into one of the fastest growing firms in the country. But I didn't stop there. After buying Evans Global, I restructured it from the inside out. I removed the toxic culture, promoted real talent, and turned what was once built on ego into something driven by empathy. I didn't keep it for myself. I merged it under a new name, the Carter Foundation. Now, instead of chasing competitors, we help people start their own companies. Young dreamers, single parents, small-town inventors, the ones no one believed in. The kind of people I used to be. Every week I walk through those programs, watching those new faces light up with hope. And I see pieces of my old self in every one of them, scared, uncertain, but hungry for a chance. That's when I realize something. Sometimes the best revenge isn't payback. It's turning your pain into someone else's opportunity. Sophie still works with me. She's not just my assistant anymore, she's my partner. The calm voice that keeps me grounded when the world gets loud. One evening, as we stood by the window watching the sunset reflect off the skyscrapers, she asked me, "Do you ever think about her? About Emily?" I thought for a moment. Then I smiled softly. "Sometimes," I said, "but not the way I used to." She nodded, understanding what I meant without another word. Because the truth is, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without pain. I heard Emily eventually moved to Seattle. Started over. Found peace in a smaller life away from all the noise. I hope that's true. There was a time when even hearing her name would twist a knife in my chest. But now it's just quiet. Like an echo that's faded with time. Maybe that's what growth really is, when you stop wishing things had gone differently, and start being grateful for what they taught you. Because without her betrayal, I never would have found this version of me, the one who knows his worth without needing anyone else to validate it. I stepped closer to the window, my reflection blending with the city lights outside. There was a time I would have given anything to have her back. But now, I wouldn't trade my peace for anyone. It's funny how life works. We chase what hurts us, thinking it's what we need, only to realize the real power was never about having more. It was about needing less. As the night settles in, I whisper to myself, not out of pride, but out of truth, she replaced me with power. I replaced pain with purpose. I pause, letting the words linger in the quiet air. In the end, that's the only victory that lasts. The camera would fade out there, the city lights glowing beneath a calm, confident man who once lost everything, only to gain himself back. And if there's one lesson I've learned through all of it, it's this. Sometimes life breaks you on purpose, just to show you what you're really made of. Because revenge fades, forgiveness frees, and peace, that's the kind of success no one can ever take away. They took my heart, my trust, and my pride. But they also gave me something stronger, purpose. And when you live with purpose, no betrayal can ever truly defeat you. If this story moved you, don't just scroll away. Hit that like button, not for me, but for every person who's ever had to rebuild from nothing. Subscribe if you believe that justice doesn't always come from revenge. Sometimes it comes from growth. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in Daniel's place? Because in the end, we've all been broken by someone. The real power is learning to rise anyway.